Cheers, everyone. So I'm checking in. We did a presentation for UPCEA, which is a Council of Higher Education, essentially a council of universities and colleges that are working on common issues. And one of the big things that we're asking about was higher education in prison. I was really grateful to have been called in to consult on that project because that's how I got my degree. I got my bachelor's in psychology from Ohio University while I was incarcerated. And the Second Chance Pell Grant, which was started back in 2015, is going to expand access to higher education to those who are incarcerated. It's going to make money available for those who want to get a degree. And colleges don't know how to go about doing that, and about the certification, and about the accreditation processes, and what it looks like to actually be able to then offer degree programs, as well as just traditional or non-traditional associates or certificate programs to people who are incarcerated. So again, I get to be a part of the project and the research, and then yesterday I got to be a part of the presentation, which I was really grateful for. Hey, Raymond. And so we got to sit there and go through the data, but we also got to make some personal connections. And I was so impressed with how many schools and individuals were motivated in doing amazing work. Like, I went to go speak at Boston University last year, and I did not realize that they have a decades-old prison program where they pay all costs. So people do not have to pay anything out of pocket. They don't have to pay for books. The university provides it because they found that it's in the best interest of the university and of the community to invest in people who are able to get a higher education while they're incarcerated. And a lot of the things we looked at were, for example, the higher someone's level of education during the period of incarceration, the lower the recidivism rate. So if somebody gets an associate's degree, the recidivism rate drops dramatically. If they get a bachelor's degree and then a master's, so basically higher education and access to higher education literally keeps people from reoffending. So making those things available is important, and there are a lot of hurdles to jump over. So one of the things is, for example, if people inside the prison, if incarcerated people have access to an education program, but the people who work there don't, they say, hey, this is patently unfair. Like, this person did something wrong. Like, why can't I get education? So what a lot of the schools do, which I think is a great model, is say, okay, anyone who's justice involved, if you work there, if your family member works there, if you're incarcerated there, we're gonna make sure you have access to an educational program. I think that's so neat. Yeah, I'm working on it. Basically, I just gave a presentation yesterday to UPCEA about higher education in prison, and I was really interested to see the number of people that were interested and involved, the universities that were kind of bonding together, and we had kind of an ad hoc committee. I appreciate George was organizing people in the room and said, okay, well, we've just founded a committee, and I'm going to be on it and co-chair with this guy over here, and so everybody put their names down, and it was one of those things where it's hard to organize. Apparently a couple years ago, there you go, Wisconsin. Wisconsin was the one who ordered or asked initially for the information from UPCEA. So that was absolutely amazing. Thank you. And so looking at the effect of higher education, looking at the opportunities that it creates, and also looking at how it benefits universities themselves. Look at how it expands their reach and their opportunity. And with Second Chance Pell, how it allows them to access money that wouldn't otherwise be available. So I think it's just absolutely amazing and neat to be able to have a part in that process and then continue to have those conversations. I have a stack of business cards, and I was sending emails last night and sending emails all morning, trying to build relationships and trying to figure out how we connect. And thank you very much, April. That's amazing. So as we look at this and we look at how we can make sure that education is available for everyone who's justice involved, well, we have to look at methods, because that's one of the problems is there's no internet access in prison. Or some places have very limited. Most places won't allow it at all. Well, how are we then going to do it? And the most effective, like the most impactful, is to have professors and outside students come into the institution and have class together. But that can be really difficult because a lot of institutions are spread out geographically. So they might be 20 or 50 or 100 miles from a local university. So that's not as practical except in certain cases. Then the second most impactful would be online education, which is, if possible, a better option. But again, very limited and very difficult to get by, even though we have all the technology and all the information, and even though every school in the country essentially has a firewall that protects kids from getting into bad information, we have really limited access. And then the third option is correspondence by mail, and that's what I did. It literally took 15 years of that, and part of that too was the cost, because every class costs hundreds of dollars. And it would be a matter of, okay, well, this year my mom can afford to pay for 3 classes, or, this semester she can afford to pay for 1. And I was really fortunate to have that because, again, in a prison of 1,150 people, I was usually one of 4 or 5 people enrolled. Now later, the local community college, Piedmont, Virginia Community College, which is absolutely amazing and a really, really good place, they started bringing classes in. But by that point, I'd basically finished all my associate's programs, or all my first 2-year programs. So I wasn't eligible to take those classes. But For the people who did, that was even cheaper. I mean, it was still prohibitively expensive for most people. So those who were in correspondence classes or going to the community college classes were almost always on a GI Bill, or just had really good fortune to come from a family that could afford to do that. And it was neat to see that transformation, especially some of the GI Bill guys who were coming out of this place of like, I've always been a grunt, I've never been able to do this, to taking a few classes and struggling, and then the community that arises out of that, the people who come together to support one another in that education process, and that growing and that learning, and saying, okay, well, let's figure out how to support one another. And you see these little study groups that are like almost misfit groups, but guys bonded together over that, and they supported one another, and they grew, and as they become better able to support one another, better able to manage the education, their view of the world expanded. And I mean, this has been happening for me too. When I first started, and this was back in 2003 in the jail, before I got sent to prison, I couldn't imagine. I was like, man, I wrecked my life. I'm such a screw up. Like, how could I even go to college? And I knew I was smart. I'd always been smart, and school had been fairly easy, but I just felt like I didn't have the worth or the value to go to college. I didn't feel like it was something I would be able to do. And then surprisingly or amazingly, like, it started to be something I enjoyed. And I still remember to this day my philosophy 101 professor who would engage in these conversations outside of the curriculum. He would ask me, like, what was the most impactful thing? Like, what did you love about this lesson? Or what did you hate about this lesson? Or what is the central question for you as we talk about this or the history of philosophy? Like, what do you care about? What means something to you? And that was so powerful to me, because to have that exchange, I felt validated. I felt like I was worthy of conversation and interaction. Like, I was worthy of education. And that totally changed my life. So seeing that really changed a lot of lives, and I'm hoping it'll continue to do so. One of the other people that really I saw have a greater impact, and probably a greater impact than anybody in the Department of Corrections, was a teacher. His name was Brian Sykes, and he was the electrical teacher. And he had basically come from a history where a lot of his friends had been killed or had ended up in prison or had not done well, and he had turned his life around. He had stopped getting in trouble and ended up being an electrician. He just got a job, and then so he was a master electrician. He did master HVAC, and he was master, really good at his field. And it was nice to have him come in and say, hey, like, I want you guys to have a chance. And one of the problems, especially where I was, is because of the rural setup of prisons, a lot of times the vocational teachers were white and a lot of the inmates were black. So to have a black teacher, to have someone who says, hey, I look like you and this is what I do, like this is a work that we can be involved in, like these are the people I work with, these are the jobs I do, was really inspirational. So not only did he teach, and not only did he take a personal investment in people's lives, like just get to know them and actually care, but he also connected them with services afterwards. So if he knew somebody was getting out, he'd say, okay, you got the certificate, and this certificate's great, but I'm going to connect you with somebody who's going to give you real on-the-job training. And I'm also going to connect you with somebody who can connect you with a union, or who can connect you with this. And so he would get these letters back, or he would get these calls back from guys that had gotten out. One guy had gotten out, and a few months out was making like $36 an hour doing traveling electrical work. Somebody else was making $50 an hour doing electronics work. Somebody else was making, and it was just a story of success, because it's not just about money, but having a foundation where you can land and you can pay for your life, where you have the income to pay for the things you need, is incredible. So for these guys who have never had a job that paid them a living wage, to all of a sudden be saying, yeah, you know, they give me a $200 a day per diem, and I make this per hour, and I'm able to do this for my kids, or I'm able to do this for my family, or I'm able to buy my mom, it's just amazing. One of the ones that was so cool is he was telling us he was thinking about leaving. So it was $42,000 for 3 months of work. And it was he was going to have to travel to Arizona, but one of his students was doing this because they were doing contract stuff. And if you had a journeyman's or a master's license, that meant you could run a job. So they wanted you there, and you didn't even have to work. You just had to be there to run the job. So they were going to do this, so $42,000 for 6 days a week for 3 months. And he was like, man, I'm thinking about going, because I'll just go, I'll sit on the job, I'll do all my side work while I'm running the job, which is just basically being there so other people can do the work, and I'm just going to bank that money. But he ended up not going because, again, he was invested in people's education. So when we talk about higher education or universities or college or technical colleges, it's not just about a degree program, because not everybody needs to get a bachelor's degree or a master's or a PhD. It's not practical, but we do all need education. We do all need guidance. We do all need skills. This really comes back to something I posted the other day, is that, you know, we focus on the academic, and that's incredibly important, but sometimes the things we need are really that foundation of kind of emotional intelligence and or emotional regulation, these skills. It's, if we have this academic tower, I think is how I put it, like, it doesn't matter how big the tower gets, if we don't have a strong emotional foundation, it doesn't matter how weak it is, the storm will come and knock it over, because we don't have that foundation we need. And that's one of the reasons that we're looking at doing social emotional learning, possibly in the juvenile center. We're looking at doing classes in the adult facility. Like, we're looking at how we can essentially go in and say, We want to make sure you have these vocational skills. We also equally want to make sure you have these emotional skills, because they're going to underlie all the areas of success you're involved in. They're going to underlie success in your relationships, in your work, and in other areas of your personal life. So again, it was truly a pleasure to be able to present in front of UPCEA. I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I'm looking forward to working with them in the future, and just the opportunity to network and find people. And that now, I was at South by Southwest last week, and I met a whole bunch of people, and I was here this week, and I met a whole bunch of people, and I'm starting to make these connections. Like, there was an educational program that I think fits really well with a buddy of mine who's got an equity license up in New York, and I was like, hey, do you guys want to connect? Like, are you interested in having a conversation? And now I'm in a position, bizarrely, to be able to put people together, and it doesn't benefit me directly. Like, I don't get anything out of the deal, but I'm able to connect people. Because what I found is success is not just about like one person, this transactional thing, but it's if I can see people around me succeed, if I can make connections, they're going to create opportunities for other people. Like, that's the work that I want to do. I want to make sure that people coming out of incarceration succeed rather than go back to their own ways, because I don't want them to victimize anyone. I don't want anyone else to suffer. If we can create opportunities, whether I have anything directly to do with it or not, that's the success, right? The success is to see other people succeed, and therefore we all kind of rise together. And I'm just really grateful to see it. So thank you all. I'm going to check in and give an update. UPCEA was amazing, and now I'm in DC and going to have to see some sites. So have a wonderful day.